America. I deal with New York and other places, but I never deal with you here in Washington. So today, I've come to see you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So that I'm hoping that that will mean that for some time to come, I'll have no more complaints about not paying attention to the people in Washington. But as you know, everywhere I go, I do try to touch base with the Ghanaian community, to bring you some news from home, and also to hear from you about the matters that are of concern to you. So that's why I'm here today. Just some preliminary statements. You know the circumstances which brought me to office in 2016, the election of 2016. We had an economy that was not going well. One of the lowest rates of growth of our GDP, I believe, for over 20 years. Virtually all the indices of economic performance and management were all going the wrong way in Ghana. We're talking about the fiscal deficit, we're talking about GDP debt ratio, we're talking about rate of growth of agriculture, rate of growth of industry, overall rate of growth of the GDP, as I've said, utility tariffs, all of these figures were going in the wrong way. And I think this is a decision that more than anything else influenced the Ghanaian people to say, let's try another lot of people, especially this man who has been knocking on the door for so long. Let's give him a chance to see whether that he has something to offer the country. And that's what brought me to office. So my concern has been basically threefold. One, to try and put the economy back on track and take the measures that would put Ghana as an attractive place for people to do business. The second was to try and reestablish a strong social foundation for our development. I'm talking about our educational and health sector. And thirdly, to deal with some specific issues that had arisen, some arose in the period of my office, but some were already there. So as far as the first concern, how to get the economy, the measures that we took, I think that, I hate patting myself on the shoulder, but I think that some of the measures that we've taken, in terms of their results, are definitely positive. The 3.6% rate of growth we inherited in 2016, when we came to office at the beginning of 2017, by the end of 2017, had gone to 8.5%.
Wow.
And this year, there's every indication that the same rate of growth of our expansion of our GDP is going to take place. The projection is for 8.3, 8.4%. So that's the most challenging of the statistics that we had to deal with. And it has shown that, yes, the decision the Ghanaian people made to change course and trust the management of the economy into different hands has paid off. We have, again, other indices that I'd like to share with you. When we came, inflation was running at some 15.4%. By the end of 2017, the figure had come down to 9.9%. The deficit, and these figures are the figures of the second and third year of an IMF-backed arrangement for Ghana. The deficit, which was at 9.3% in 2016, had come down to 5.9%.
Wow. Wow.
Growth in agriculture, which was at 3% in 2016, metamorphosed to 8.4% in 2017, largely due to the success of the initiative that we brought in of planting for food and jobs. Negative 0.5% growth of industry transformed into 17.7% in 2017. For 8 years, we have not witnessed any reduction of electricity and utility tariffs, apart from having the 4 years and some of erratic energy supply, which we all christened doomsday. In the period that has gone past, electricity tariffs for residential users, customers was reduced by 17.5%. Non-residential customers, that is essentially industrial, commercial enterprises, 30% reduction. The mining sector registered a 10% reduction in tariffs. And then for the special low tariff customers, the big users, 25%. As far as water was concerned, it came down by 10% across the board. You have other indices. The nurses' training allowances that were cancelled were restored in my first year in office. Again, the teacher training allowances that had been cancelled were restored in my first year of office. We had witnessed virtually the collapse of the NHIS. We revived it by beginning to pay off the debt, the 1.2 billion cedis debt that we inherited for the NHIS. A lot of it has been paid down, and the service is beginning to be properly resumed. And then the debt to GDP ratio, 73% in 2017, has come down to 64% at the end of 2017. The size of the GDP itself is a final statistic that I want to leave with you. It was 164 billion cedis in 2016. A year later, it had expanded to 206 billion cedis. So if you look at all of these indices, there's no doubt about it that the change that the people saw in the management of the economy had been largely vindicated. And we intend to continue with the program of discipline of our public finances and measures that will stimulate the economy and stimulate enterprise in Ghana as the way forward to restoring vigor and health to our economy. We move on to the second matter I want to report to you about. That is the revival and expansion of our educational system. You know that for a long time, primary and junior high school education have been essentially free. But senior secondary school education was not. And the fact that it was a fee-paying part of the educational structure, ladder, meant that every year for the 5 years before the free senior high school policy was implemented last September, an average of 100,000 Ghanaian youths were falling out of the educational system every year, i.e., at the end of JHS, even though they had the qualifications to go to SHS, because their parents didn't have it, they couldn't continue their education. And this trend continued, that on the average, every year, 100,000 young men and women would be thrown onto the labor market only with the information and the knowledge that you gain up to junior high school. Essentially, you are condemning all these young men and women to a life of hopelessness in the 21st century. That cannot be the quality of education that we want our labor force to have in order to be able to compete. The competition is not just internal, it's also global. You're competing with labor force in Asia, Latin America, other parts of Africa, and of course in Europe and America. So we took the decision, big decision because of its impact on our public finances, that we would support a program of free senior high school education. I was called a lot of names. I was lying, I was Medada for, I wouldn't be able to do it, I couldn't do it, it wasn't a good idea, we needed another 20 years for it to be done, a whole lot of things. But this is the nature of politics, you have to bear it. People say all kinds of things, you have to bear it. Knowing fully well what you can and would like to do. So when we came, we decided to implement the policy. Its effects have been quite dramatic. 90,000 more students entered the educational system in 2017, in September of 2017, than they had the year before, which meant that the average, that 100,000 that were dropping out, suddenly now were in a position to go to school. The system worked well. But then having opened the door, you then have now to prepare yourself for even bigger and bigger numbers going down the road. So this year, the figure of 90,000 doubled, became 180,000 plus more than the averages that had been going through before. And we were faced with the decision that either we go back on our promise because of the numbers and that the existing infrastructure in our secondary school system will not be able to absorb the numbers, or we would have to have some creative and intelligent way of being able to absorb this increased population. So we opted for the latter, that we were not going to go back on our commitment for senior high school education, but we would find an intelligent way of dealing with this rapid expansion of the population whilst we're working on how to expand our infrastructure. I was always encouraged in this exercise by the attitude of our first president in the 1950s when he launched the accelerated educational policy. I speak about Kwame Nkrumah and the CPP government then, where they took the view that the empowerment, the scaling up of the capacity of our young people was absolutely critical if we were going to make a fist out of education. And so implemented a policy which faced many of the same challenges, absence of infrastructure, even to some extent even of teachers, but nevertheless opening the gates for more and more young people to enter the system. I made the same decision that yes, there may be limitations of infrastructure, but we can find an intelligent way to deal with it. And that is what we have done with the double track system, which has allowed us to be able to deal with this expanding population. There are many of you here in America, I mean, several states here in America, who are familiar with this system of the double track system. There's nothing unusual or strange about it. It can work, it has worked here, and it's working already very well in Ghana. We have two streams of students who are now going to do the first year on a semester basis, the green group and the yellow group. The green group are the first to have gone into school in September, and the yellow group will be going in November. Using this existing infrastructure, they are going to be able, all of them, to be able to go to school together. But in addition to that, another important decision has been made, which is to recruit over 8,000 more teachers than we had the year before, so that this expanded population will also have the teacher component to be able to guarantee the minimum standards that we want. So that's the solution that has been found. I hear that there is a program to review it when people come back to power. They're going to review it. Well, that decision will be made by the Ghanaian people on the 7th of December 2020. But I'm alarmed by this concept of review because anytime our political opponents have talked about reviewing our policies, it has been really a synonym for collapsing the policies. We remember